disrupted.
America that I fought.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Been a fantastic day so far. So you may have seen the recent video that we covered about Canada's horrible stance when it comes to advancing more censorship, advancing more control over information, and how horrific it's going to be for Canadians. But we know that this is spreading globally. We know that what's happening in Canada is also happening in the UK. It's also happening in Australia. It's happening all around the globe. And now, in a lot of cases, it's happening in the United States. And the United States, provisionally, through their motion of trying to ban TikTok, that was their big motive, and that's why they had the TikTok CEO come to Congress and confess. Even though he's from Singapore, they try to manipulate him as some sort of Chinese adversary, and that's why they got to ban TikTok, because somehow China is stealing information, or it's damaging for kids, or whatever kind of stupid lie and fabrication that they try to manipulate people with. The whole reason that this TikTok ban is being introduced, the whole reason for this, is because these social media platforms have become so popularized that legacy media is in trouble. They know that the chain to manipulate us, the establishment, to the mainstream press, to us viewing the mainstream press, is breaking. They know they don't have a hold on us, and they don't have a hold on the control of information. So in order to control the hold of information and keep us on that leash, they have to go these measures. And it's just absolutely baffling that in the United States of America, land of the free, home of the brave, they're going down this road. And it's both GOP and Democrats, side by side, that are allowing this to happen. So, for example, this just happened recently on NBC News. They report that the House votes 352 to 65 to pass a bill that could ban TikTok in the United States. The legislation now heads to Senate, where it faces an uncertain fate. President Biden has said he would now sign it into law. So that's both Democrats and Republicans teaming up together bipartisanly to ban social media platforms and allowing you to access other information outside the mainstream media. This is how they're controlling the narrative. This is how they're manipulating people and brainwashing people. They don't like the idea of alternative media. They don't like the idea of alternative opinions. They don't like the idea of regular Joes and Janes on the internet interacting with each other that's not in control of their hands. And that is why they're going down this insanely disgusting, diabolical, draconian route. We've already experienced a lot of this in Canada. There's already experienced this in other nations, and the United States is also falling down that trap. It's amazing that these countries that are forming these laws are all the same ones aligned with the WEF. The WEF that's also cultivating that other countries get involved with this. They're threatening other countries that they have to censor more because we're losing control. We're losing control. People are waking up to the fact that they're being manipulative by the oligarchy. And what's amazing about this is that there are some different takes to this bill being passed. Like, for example, Michael Tracy points out, lead sponsor of the TikTok bill, Representative Mike Gallagher, admits the real reason they're rushing the TikTok ban because it's becoming the dominant news platform for Americans under 30. And the U.S. government doesn't control it like other platforms. So that is the big reason, the big giant red flag reason why TikTok is being targeted for this, is because TikTok has not been siphoned control by the U.S. oligarchy. We know that Facebook and other tech giants have been cultivized by the American government, by oligarchies, by the WEF, by the WHO. But TikTok is an alternative media platform. TikTok is outside of that. And they don't like that. They don't like an outsider voice telling people and getting people informed outside of the control of the hands of the establishment. And here's what Mike Gallagher, who's the Republican in Wisconsin, openly admits, that this bill really has nothing to do with TikTok. It just has more of overreaching control.
Impacted sites are those associated with foreign adversary apps, such as TikTok.com. It can never be used to penalize individuals. The text explicitly prohibits that, and it cannot be used to censor speech. It takes no position at all on the content of speech, only foreign adversary control. Foreign adversary control of what is becoming the dominant news platform for Americans under 30. This is a common sense measure to protect our national security. I urge my colleagues to support this critical bipartisan legislation. The only impact.
So basically, anyone outside the U.S. establishment that is in control of this platform is a threat to us. And what's interesting about this take is that they're worried about TikTok having foreign influence. But do they not realize that for how many years now that Facebook, YouTube, Google, Reddit, Twitter all had contributions of foreign affairs outside the U.S.? We know that the Saudi kingdom was siding behind Twitter at the time when it was Twitter, before Elon Musk took over. We know that Facebook sides with the Israeli government and has partnerships with the Israeli government to push propaganda. We know that Wikipedia has contributions and editors, part of the Mossad intelligence group. A foreign country's intelligence group is running Wikipedia. Do they mention any of that in these bills? No. But they're worried about the one that people under 30 have become so popularized with because it's alternative away from the same goddamn mainstream stew that they're trying to barf into our face for so many years. This is all about control. Control the narrative to control the culture. And here's also Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie, who's been pretty good at pointing these out. Thomas Massie has been pretty good at pointing out the obvious and reminding people just how lucrative and how diabolical these bills have become. So here's Michael Tracy again, pointing out Thomas Massie's point to the fact that this is just another sneak attack of introducing this bill as a TikTok bill, when really this is about attacks on websites. Because if it's not just TikTok, they'll go after, say, the Gray Zone or WikiLeaks or me. They'll go after anybody that is not kissing up to the establishment and pushing aggressively establishment pro talking points done by the intelligence community, done by nefarious corporations, done by the military-industrial complex. We live in such a fascist totalitarian state that anyone that has an open opinion outside of those norms are being threatened with. And here's Thomas Massie to remind us that.
The TikTok application is a Trojan horse, but there's some of us who feel that either intentionally or unintentionally, this legislation to ban TikTok is actually a Trojan horse. Some of us are concerned that there are First Amendment implications here. Americans have the right to view information. We don't need to be protected by the government from information. Some of us just don't want the president picking which apps we can put on our phones or which websites that we can visit. We don't think that's appropriate. We also think it's dangerous to give the president that kind of power, to give him the power to decide what Americans can see on their phones and their computers. To give him that sort of discretion, we also think is dangerous. Now, people say that this TikTok ban will only apply to TikTok or maybe another company that pops up just like TikTok, but the bill is written so broadly that the president could abuse that discretion and include other companies that aren't just social media companies.
They really took a play out of the Canadian political playbook right there. They're introducing these laws in legislature and in Congress here in the United States that are so vastly vague that really it could take down anyone. That is the whole intention of these laws. That's the whole intentions of these bills that are being passed, is that they write them so vague that is an open blanket to attack anybody. Just like what we've seen with Bill C-11 here in Canada, with the Online News Act and the Online Streaming Act, and now introducing the Online Harms Act, they're all written so vague that they're not even particular to the actual scenario that they're trying to impose the bill for. They're using this as a cover to implement a total wide of authoritarian measures to contradict and go after websites and social media posts and anybody really under the umbrella terms that are written up in this bill. They do that purposely. They're doing that purposely so that anyone can have a target on their back. Anyone. Even if you're not, from invested from China or pushing some sort of Russian, it doesn't matter. If it's not 100% on board with the U.S. establishment, the war empire, you are met with a target on your back. That's how vague they're trying to write this up. So it's really nothing to do with TikTok. It has nothing to do with China. It has to do with the fact that people are getting away from traditional legacy dying media and the spew of propaganda that they're being thrown at every night since the time they were born, and going towards alternative platforms to get some other information that might be critical to their understanding of the world.
And that aren't, as some people would believe, controlled by foreign adversaries. Again, we're giving the president that discretion to decide whether it is controlled by a foreign adversary. There were some people who were legitimately concerned that this was an overly broad bill, and they got an exclusion written into the bill that I want to read. It says the term covered company does not include an entity that operates a website or application whose primary purpose is to allow users to post product reviews, business reviews, or travel information and reviews. Why is this exception in the bill? Why did somebody feel like they needed this exception if the bill itself only covers social media applications that foreign adversaries are running? These and other questions we hope to answer in the course of this debate, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Kentucky.
Isn't that amazing that just minutes before they pass this through the House and push it on to actual legitimate law, that they throw in that provision? They throw in that little tiny exception that, oh, well, if it's for product purposes or trying to promote a vacation spot, it's okay then. I guess we don't have to scrutinize their website. I guess we don't have to worry about their social media posts. But anybody else, you're up for grabs. Again, Thomas Massey makes some good points when it comes to bills, and he realizes that how vague and generalized this is should be dangerous. The fact that it's not just directed at TikTok is already a catastrophe at foot. This is the government, again, trying to enact full-on censorship without doing it themselves. They're trying to enact this bill to push it through that they control social media companies, and because they're private entities, and private entities can do whatever they want, as I've been told multiple times, which is such a stupid-ass argument, they're enacting alongside with the government to restrict people from being social on social media. We live in a fascist state. We live in a fascist state. That is the definition of fascism. When the government overreach and private corporations intertwine together to oppress the working class populace, that is fascism. And what comes out of fascism? Even more censorship. More censorship than we did with 2 years of COVID, or the years of Russiagate, or the years of the Russia-Ukraine war. It just never goddamn ends. And it will never goddamn end. Because, again, people are waking up to the fact they're going on to TikTok, they're going away from traditional media, and they're scared to shit. They're scared to shit that they're losing control of the public. So, God forbid, we have to create all these new laws that we have to capture these people, get them away from social media, get them away from other websites, and push them into the mainstream narrative. And if you're not part of the mainstream narrative, then you obviously are a traitor to this country. That's how they're trying to play this. And here's the bill here. This is what Thomas Massey was pointing out here. It says, breaking, the new TikTok ban bill, H.R. 7521, gives the executive branch of government the power to define any platform or website as foreign-owned, even if domestic, giving them the ability to control, censor the content being published by the company. And again, I find this so funny because they're doing the exact same thing our Canadian government is doing right now. They're trying to promote Canadian content through restricting Canadian content. That's the whole motive of, Bill C-11 and Bill C-18, the online news bill and the online censorship, the online content bill. The reason that they're trying to put it, and they even wrote this in the bill, they're saying that they're trying to promote Canadian content. But the thing is, they don't define what Canadian content is. They don't tell you what exactly is Canadian content. Like for myself, example, I'm a Canadian. I'm broadcasting Canadian. We cover Canadian stories. I would be considered Canadian content by most people. But it's not most people's decision. It's not majority rule. It's the government deciding what's Canadian content. It's the government. It's the oligarchy deciding what is favorable Canadian content. So it's not pushing Canadian content. It's promoting establishment Canadian content. So even if you are an American that's covering American news and you're on TikTok or you're on a social media site or you have a blog or whatever, and you're doing American stories as an American, publishing or broadcasting in America, you're not considered American content. The same way I can't be considered Canadian content by the Parliament here in Canada. Do you see how fishy this all is? Do you see how screwed up this is? And there's the bill there in highlight there. The term cover company means an entity that operates directly or indirectly a website, desktop application, mobile application, or argument or emissive technology application that blah, 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 blah. So again, it's not just TikTok. They're not at all concerned about TikTok. They're concerned that TikTok, like other websites, they don't have control over. Because the internet is the Wild West. The internet is a marketplace of free ideas. And the whole purpose of having this internet and why we want to preserve it and why we think we should have a Bill of Rights at this point, because the internet is such a vast tool of existence here in this world, is allowing to have a marketplace of free ideas. It is the public square. Social media platforms are means of communication to one another. And if we don't have means of communication, then why the hell do we have social media to begin with? Why the hell do we even have opinions and conversations to begin with if we don't have the ability to communicate with one another? That's why I tell people when they give the excuse of, oh, well, Facebook banning posts, that's their decision because they're a private company. They provide a platform. And they're enacting rules like publishers by banning posts off a platform, then they really shouldn't have a platform. They really shouldn't be in the business of social media. They should be running the New York Times or the Washington Post or newspapers then. If they're controlling and telling people, hey, you can't have this post on here and giving you vague reasons, then they shouldn't be having a social media site to begin with, period. And here's RFK Jr.'s take on this, because RFK Jr. Saw this happening, and RFK Jr. is obviously on the side of free speech, much like the rest of the country. He says the so-called TikTok ban is actually a Trojan horse that can allow the president to ban any website or ad merely by asserting that it is controlled or guided by a foreign adversary. Meaning all they have to do to any social media site, any post, any blog, any publication, any video, any channel, they could just say that they're taking Putin talking points, that they're Russian puppets. That's all they have to do. That's all they have to do. And they get immediately banned. They get immediately taken down. All they have to do is make up some crazy, conspiracy story that somehow this publication is related to this country and they won't give you an explanation, but they could take them down right away. Which is already happening. It's already happening. But now they have the legal stance to do it. Now they can legally do it. And this is by far a Trojan horse, a violation of the free speech and the First Amendment and the ability of free press. It's dead in America. It's dead in Canada, and it's dead around the world because we have corrupted oligarch criminals that want to control information so they can control the narrative, so they can manipulate people into stay into line so they can get away with their criminal catastrophe. Because they don't want people in the know. Censorship has been the longest battle throughout human history. If you look at any point throughout human existence, people have always been fighting censorship. Whether it being the oligarchs today with their technocrats in big tech companies, or the lords and the kingdom back in the Dark Ages when they didn't want the peasants to be knowledgeable. Because we can't have smart peasants in this world because the peasants have to keep on working. They don't want people to be smart enough to know why they're working, but they just want them to keep working. And that is the world that we're in, folks. 2024. The land of the free and the home of the brave. We really have to fight down to get that back. Because by far, this is nothing American patriotic about this. This is complete catastrophe and overreach of the oligarchy that's destroying the country that most of you know and love.